This is Gemara Metziah Daf Tes, and we're holding in the bottom of Ches Amid Beis. We're approximately 15 lines from the bottom. The first word in the line is Loi Kani. We're in the middle of discussing the kinyanim of roichev, of riding an animal, or I should say better. We're in the middle of discussing the kinyanim regarding an animal, and two in particular. Number one, riding the animal, and number two, Maisira, leading, taking the animal by the reins, the bridle, etc. Says the Gemara, it's Marnami Amar Rav Chalboi Amar Rav Huna. Moisira michaviroi kana b'mitziah u'b'nechse hager loy kana. Says Rav Chalboi Amar Rav Huna. Moisira, if someone grabs hold of the reins of michaviroi kana, if it's his friend's animal, that is an act of acquisition. But if it's an animal of a Metziah, or if it's an animal of Nichse Hager, a ger is nifter, and of course we know that a ger has no relatives, as a ger shen niskayer, a convert is considered kikatan shenoila dami. So therefore, whoever takes hold of his possessions has the kinyan. So if one goes to an animal of a ger, and goes, well, just to point out, of course, a ger could have children after he was a Megayer, talking to one that does not, and therefore has no relatives. So if one goes and takes hold of the Maisira, of the reins of the animal, Loi Kani, there is no kinyan. So says the Gemara, what is the reason between Maisira Mechaviroi versus B'Metziah Nichsei Ager? My Lashain Metzira. Explains the Gemara, what does the word Maisira come from, I should say. Amar Rava ID Asbar Ali ID, that someone's name explained to me. Ka'adam HaMoiser Davar Lechaviroi. The word is similar to mean like someone gives over something to his friend. And therefore, explains Rav Huna as follows. Why? To come also because his friend gave it over to him. When it comes to finding an object, when it comes to the properties of a ger, no one is giving it to him, delikni, for him to make a kinyan, and therefore, indeed, in such a scenario, there would be no kinyan. Says the Gemara, going back and asking a kasha on Rav Yehuda. Rav Yosef said, Amrli Rav Yehuda nechse yanan, hamanig seifik is arbayin, a yishiv b'karoin seifik is arbayin. Whereas this I was referring to both the manig and the yishiv b'karoin. That was referring to in a situation of kalayim. That both the one that was riding the animal, actually riding in the caravan, and the one that was leading the animal gets malchus. So Meisvei asks the Gemara, and again we brought that in to equate the din of roichev in our Mishnah to one who is yeshev ba'karin. So Meisvei asks the Gemara Rav Yehuda from our Mishnah. Hayishnayim roichev al gabe behema. We're 8 lines in the bottom. The first line is behema v'chulu. So Mani, whose opinion is the Mishnah? Ilem Rameir. If you can tell me it's Rameir Hashta Yeshiv Kani Reichavi Bai. For Rameir holds merely sitting in the wagon behind an animal you're kaina. Of course, Reichav. Elalav Rabbanan. The Mishnah must be the Rabbanan Ushva Minan. What's the Raya? Reichav Kani. So you see, riding is a kinyan. So says the Gemara, Kasha on Rav Yehuda. Rav Yehuda said Reichav is not a kinyan, says the Gemara. Again, and the Kasha and Rav Yehuda is particularly that according to the Rabbanan, we see in the Mishnah that Rachov, riding is a kinyan, even though Yoshev HaKaron would not be a kinyan. Rav Yehuda held both are a kinyan. Says the Gemara, what's going on over here? Bemanhig beraglov. The way the person is riding in the Mishnah is not stam sitting on the animal. He's being manig. He's leading the animal. How is he leading the animal? By kicking the animal. You make the animal go, and therefore, as Rashi 4 lines to the bottom points out, and therefore it's more of a form of leading the animal. That's why there is a kinyan. Says the Gemara, Yachi, if that's true, I know Manik. The Mishnah said one is riding and one is leading. What do you mean? They're both leading if you kicking it. Says Gemara, you're right. Tregav the Manik is two types of leading. And what's the Chiddush? Ma'u the Tema. I would have thought Rachav Adav to Manik. Of the riding is better. To Hamanik Vitafas Bay. He has a dual item that he's doing. Number one, he's leading the animal. Number two is he's toughest. He's grabbing hold of the animal. Kamash Milan, that they both have equal levels of kinyan, and therefore there is no kasha at the end of the day on Rav Yehuda, who said that Reichev is not a valid kinyan, in as much as we were able to answer up that the Mishnah is not referring to a regular Reichev, but rather only a Reichev that your bayit baraglov, that you kick the animal with your legs. Says the Gemara Tashima. Tashima, the Gemara continues, bring a raya to Rabbi Yehuda. I want to point out, maybe I should have done this a moment ago, for the sake of time, you then make things more confusing. We have to look a little bit higher in the Gemara. And the Gemara brought this raya from the case of Kilayim. Amanik Seving Zarbayim Yisha Bekaran Seving Zabayim. Rameir Paiter is Yisha Bekaran. But the raya, again, what is Shita's Rabbi Yehuda? That Shmuel switched around the names. V'chachamim Paitrin as a Yoshe Ba'akara in Shema Mina Rachav Lechudei Loi Kani V'kolshkein Rachav B'makei Manik. That was the opinion of Rabbi Yehuda, that Rachav is Loi Kani. So again, just to rewind, we just had a kasha from the Mishnah because it seemed clear that Roichev is yes Kaineh. Says the Gemara, no, the Mishnah was referring to a form of Reichev, which was a manig by being bayit be raglov. So Tashima, now the Gemara is going to bring a raya, 2 lines from the bottom. Two people are pulling a camel or leading a donkey. One is pulling, and one is leading. As we turn over to Tes Amid Aleph, says the Gemara, B'mida Zais Kanu. I think Gemara is going to explain what exactly is Mida Zais. Of course, whenever you have a word Zeh or Zais, it's coming to exclude from something. So says the Gemara, one's leading, one's pulling. This act, in this mannerism, you're Kaineh, Rav Yehuda Aimer. Lo'ilam lo'ikana shtei meshicha begamal vehanhaga bechamar. Says the Gemara, the only time you're Kaineh, says Rav Yehuda, is pulling the camel or leading the donkey. So Ktani Mihas, what do we see? Tazam 3 lines down. One is pulling, one is leading. Clearly, the only way to make a kinyan we see over here is via pulling, via leading. But aval rachav loy. So we see a raya to Rabbi Yehuda that rachav lechudei is not a kinyan. Says the Gemara, no raya. Who adin dafil rachav? Really, the same thing is even right in the animal. Why do the Bryce say cases of leading, of pulling? Le'afuke mid Rav Yehuda. Teaches not like Rav Yehuda Damar Ashetei Meshicha Begamal Vanhaga Bechamor. Rav Yehuda says it only works if there's a pulling, and a pulling particularly Begamal with the camel and Anhaga particularly Bechamor. So Kamashlan Davilu Ebchanami Kani. But it's not teaching us anything about Rachov. Says the Gemara, 1 second. If it's true, so then the Tanakama should have brought out both cases together. What should the Tanakama have said? 10 lines down. The first one line is Shnayim. Shnayim sheyam ma'ishchunu manhigin bein begamal bein chamari kachatza deloy kani. Excuse me. Should have said Shnayim sheyam ma'ishchunu manhigin bein begamal bein chamar. Should have put them all together. If it's just teaching Klaf Fuke Rav Yehuda, who's particular how it goes, so it should have listed them both together. Answers you are no kachatza deloy. Kani, there is one scenario which would not work even according to the Tana Tkama, which is which case? Which is that if it would have listed, so again, what did the Tanakama hold? Tanakama held the Mida Zois Kani, that you're both Moishchin begamal, manhigin bechamar, Echad Moishich ve'echad Manig. Only in those cases, and that's coming Afuke from Rav Yehuda. We could just look at Rashi for 1 second. Rashi says on the third line, couldn't have listed it all together. Why? Also, that which the derech is for both. Another lashon the Gemara. Excuse me, not another lashon. Incorrect. This is the one case that is not koine, says the Gemara. Some say it's the Meshicha by a chamar, or that's not good. Or some say it's on haga biga mol. Says the Gemara, v'es the ma'asev aseifa. There are those that learn from the seifa of this brisa. What did the brisa say? B'mida zu kana. B'mida zu lemute mai. What exactly is the brisa clearly honing in on with the terminology of b'mida zais? My lav lemute rachov is not coming to exclude that rachov does not work. Lai lemute ibcha. It's coming to include the opposite of the way the brisa listed. That will not work. That's mamash Rav Yehuda. So the same thing. The Gemara thought we had a raya. Here the raya is coming more from the lashon. The Gemara says there's no raya. Tashema, 15 lines down. First one is V'ika. Let's continue discussing whether Rachav is a Kenyan. Says the Brisa, Echad Rachav v'chamar v'echad tafas b'mesira. One is riding, one is holding the reins. Zekana chamar v'zekana mesira. Says the Brisa. The one riding is kind of the chamar. The one leading by the reins is kind of just the mesira. Shema mina Rachav kani. Says the Gemara. This seemingly is a right. The riding is yes. A kinyan, which of course would be a kasha in Rav Yehuda. Chanami says more no kasha. B'manag b'rag v'achinigna miracham mesira. Imazekana chamar v'chatzi mesira v'zekana chatzi mesira. Says the Gemara, if it's true that you're being manag b'chamar, nikni nami rachav b'moy sira. Says the Gemara, meaning, because the brisa sounds like the one that is leading the animal is getting the, it sounds like the one that's riding the animal, is getting just the animal. The other one is getting just the Maisira. It says the Gemara, if he's being Roichev Biraglov, if he's Manik Biraglov, if he's leading the animal as he's riding it, he should also get the Maisira. He should also get the reins because he's fully leading the animal. Says the Gemara, you're right. Ema. The one that is riding the animal, he's kind of both the chamar and part of the maisira. Zekana chatzi maisira, part of the other half of the reins. Bishlam of kani. Says Gemara, 1 second. The guy riding the animal, leading it with his legs, I understand that he's kind of the animal, and I understand he's kind of part of the reins. Why? Because who lifted the rein off the floor? The other guy. So other guy's a ben das. So when he lifted up the reins, I'm riding the animal, so I'm kind of the animal and part of the reins. Elotavas b'mesira, the other guy that picks up the reins, b'maikani. How does he have a kinyan? What's the question? The question is, he's only holding part of the reins. The other part is being held by whom? The animal. So how does he have a kinyan at all? Says Gemara, you're right. The guy riding it is kind of the chamar and the entire reins. And the other guy is only kind of that which is in his hand precisely, not half of the moisira, just a part that is tachas yadai, which of course the chiddush, and we're seeing that to make a kinyan that which is tachas yadai, the Gemara is teaching us is easier than being kind of the proper reins. Says the Gemara, Hi Mai, what is going on over here? If you're going to tell me picking something up for your friend, he's kind of that's when you pick it up for the other guy. Here, when the guy picked up the Mesir, he didn't do it for me, the rider. He did it for himself. Ew, like Kani. Doesn't make any sense that for himself, who he picked it up for, he's not going to lachrini for the other guy. He's makni. How does this whole story make sense that the rider is being kind of the animal and the entire Masira? Because the other guy's picking it up for him. No, he's not. He's picking it for himself, and he's not even kind of for himself. He should be kind of for the other guy. Amar Ravashi, says Ravashi, you're right. This is how you have to read the Brisa. Zekon chamor ubeis pagya. The one riding the animal is kind of the chamor ubeis pagya, which is the part of the moisir that's over the animal's head. Zekon mashetafos biyod vashar, and the rest of the reins loikana loizeh, loizeh. Neither one is kind of. So that's how Rav Ashi changes the wording of the Brisa to fit the din that we're saying. Rav Avua Amar, about 20 lines to the bottom. The first line is Amar. Says Rav Avua, no, there's another way to read the Brisa. Really, you can read the Brisa as said originally. And the reason why that the one picking up the Moisira's kainet, we said the other guy didn't pick it up for him, and it's being picked up from the animals. Says no, because he's able to pull the entire Moisira next to him. Therefore, by just picking it up, he has a kinyan. V'hadir Rav Avua says the Gemara Barusahi is not his badusa. It's messed up. It's outside. Rashi says it's not the right halacha. Because if you don't say this, I'll ask you the following kasha. We have a garment that's partially on karka. It's partially al gabi amud. It's partially on the ground. He picks up half that's on the ground, and someone else comes to be a chatzim al gabi amud. Hachanami, they kind of come about like honey. Are you going to tell me the first guy is fully kaina? Why is the first guy fully kaina? When you picked it up, it was on top of a pole. Because he could have pulled it to himself. But we know that is not the halacha. It is mistaken. So again, this brisa was brought to prove Rachav. We ended up having to change the brisa. We ended up having to say the brisa is referring to Manik Beraglov. And then we got involved in a lengthy discussion how you're kind of the Masira. Two different teruts in the territory of Ashi and the potential territory of Avua, which Gemara proves is incorrect. Tashema continues the Gemara. 10 lines to the bottom. The first line is Rav Eliezer Omer to prove about Rachav. Rachav Besada Amaning Beir says the Braisa, one who rides an animal in the field, one who leads an animal in the city, that such a way is a kinyan. So what do we see? We see riding an animal is yes a kinyan. Says the Gemara, no raya. Chanami brag beraglov yachi and manig. That's hinting is being manig. Trigam manig. Two types of manig. Yachi rachav beir. My time aloy kanis. Then what's why? Why does it say that beir? Only manig leading it is kind. If you're being manig beraglov, if you're riding the animal, kicking it, then it should be kind of everywhere. Amar Rav Kahana says Rav Kahana it's not normal. It's not normal to ride an animal through the city. And that is the reason why there would be no kinyan. Amalei Rav Ashi, Rav Kahana Lameata says Rav Ashi. 1 second, Rav Kahana, according to what you just said, you just taught us a fascinating novelty that the kinyan, the form of acquisition, is intrinsically tied to the norm of that locale, to the norm of that item. If that's true, he says, I don't understand. So you're going to tell me if I pick up a wallet, you're going to tell me if I do a quote-unquote action which is not normal on Shabbos, there's no kinyan. Elamai David. What do you mean? You're right, you should have picked up the wallet, but you did Vikani. It might not be normal to ride an animal through the city, but my David Vikani. Says the Gemara, you're right, Ella. But Mekach Umem Karaskinan, what is the Brisa dealing with when it says that the only way you can make a kinyan is bisada by riding it and not be'ir? The reason is, the reason is because we're talking about Mekach Umem buying and selling. The Amar Lei, he says to him, Kedisha Darach B'nei Adam Kainim. The seller said to the buyer, be kind of like people are kind of, and therefore there's only going to be a kinyan if done in the normal mannerisms that people do things, and therefore people don't normally ride behemoths in the street of the ear of the city. Therefore, you will not be able to affect a kinyan in such a situation. Says the Gemara on the top of Testament Beis, but if we're talking about a Rishus Harabim, Kani, then he yes has a kinyan. V'yadam chashavu. The top Rashi explains, why do we yes have a kinyan? Even be'ir, why? Because it's normal to ride an animal in such a place. V'yadam chashavu, and if he's adam chashav as well, Kani, because again, it's ein darka lahanik behema beraglov v'derach kavoid l'rakav ela af besimta she'eminei adam sham, because it's normal for a chashav person to ride the animal. Chanisha she'in kayach lechos bebehema baninati behama behemena. Similarly, says the Gemara, v'isha, if she's a woman, kani as well. Because again, because it's the normal to ride the animal, v'inish zili, and if he's a low person and he doesn't understand the norms of society, he as well will be kani. So says the Gemara, a bunch of cases in which there will even be able to be a kinyan via racha, via riding the animal, even be'ir. Says the Gemara, Ba'i Rav Elazar. Continuing the concept of kinyanim, ha'omer lechaveiroi, mashach be'emazu liknois kelim she'oleha mahu. 4 lines down, Testament Beis, someone tells his friend, pull this animal close to you to acquire the utensils that are on the animal. Liknois. Ma'u liknois. What ma'u? What's halacha? Liknois, says the Gemara. What? You tell me he's make a kinyan? Miyamar like kinyan, never told him to make a kinyan. He never said explicitly to be kind of the kelim. So therefore, how's it going to work? Okay. So the seller actually said didn't do a mashiach and actually be koine the kalim. So mahu. Now we got the shayla. Mi mahani mashiach the behema laknuye kalim. Is the mashiach on the behema a way to be koine the kalim, the utensils on it? That was the shayla of Rav Elazar. Amar Rava. Says Rava, Amar le kini behema v'kini kelim. Says Rava, 1 second. If someone says acquire the animal and acquire the kelim, mikani kelim, would in that case you be kind of the kelim? Meaning we're not even asking that case. We're talking about a case of pulling the animal to just be kind of the kelim. But responds Rava, 1 second. Even if you're being kind of both without work, it would not, says Rava. Why not? Because chatzar malechasi. It would not work because it's a movable chatzar v'chachas malechas like kani. You can't. How would you make a kid in this case? That it's in your chatzar, it's in your possession. You acquire the animal, and in the animal's possession are the utensils. Says the Gemara, 1 second, but that chatzar is a movable chatzar v'chatzar malechas like kani. You can't be kind of with a movable chatzar. V'chiteiman, if you're going to suggest kisha the animal sitting still. But the rule is anything that if it was moving, you make a kinyan. I mean, if you have like kani, you still don't have a kinyan. Ve'ilchasam bika faisa. Rav Elazar's shayla would be when it's tied up. If the animal is tied up, then we have a shayla. Can you make a kinyan on the kelim by pulling the animal that is tied up underneath it? Amru le Rabba v'Ravuna b'Reid Rav Yeshua le Rav Alamiyat Toyelech Malach Messina. Based on your Shiloh Rav Elazar, someone's on a boat, the kafsa dagim enough l'teichasvina, and a fish jumped into the boat. Are you going to tell me, achanami, the chatzar malachasi? Are you going to tell me that it's a movable chatzar, therefore you don't have a kinyan? V'loikani, amar le, no, svina menach a boat doesn't move. Umayu to come on place, the water that's moving it underneath it. Amar Ravina the Ravashi alameata is malachas v'shaz rabim v'zark like chayka. If a woman is walking in the street, he throws again and lands in her lap. Kalasa lands in her basket. You tell me there's no gerushin? The basket itself, and she is moving underneath it, and therefore such would not be a kasha. So the Gemara has not really answered the Shaila of Rav Elazar, but the Shaila at least stands. I mean, the Gemara tried to prove from numerous areas that it wouldn't even be a Shaila, and of that, the Gemara deflected all of those questions, and we're left with the Shaila of Rav Elazar. What is the story if someone wants to be kind of the kelim by being Moshech the Behema, and in a case of kafot where it is tied up, that's going to be the shayla. Continues the Gemara. No, I should say one step better. One step better being when Rava responded to Rav Elazar. Rava said, 1 second, you're asking about pulling the animal to be kind of the kelim on it. What if you're actually kind of the animal and kind of the kelim? Even that Rava didn't want to let work. And on that, the Gemara is saying, no, if the animal's tied up, then that would for sure work. That wouldn't be a shaila. The shaila just is to be kind of just the kelim. And we begin the Mishnah towards the bottom of Tes Amid Beis. Someone's running an animal. Please give me the Metziah, Nala. The guy picks it up, and he says, I am acquiring this item. Zachaba, he acquires it. In Mishnah Nasa life, after he gave it to him, Amar Niza Chisiba, Techila ready was Zeichen at Loy Amar Klum. So again, Reuven and Shimon are walking. Reuven tells Shimon, hey, look at that diamond ring. Can you give it to me? Shimon picks it up. He says, hey, diamond ring, I want to be kainet. He's kainet. If he gives it to Reuven, and only after he gives it over, he says, oh, wait, I wanted to be kainet, then it is meaningless. Says the Gemara Tanan, also we learned to the Mishnah, with this we can include Misha Liket as Abeya. So who's picking the peah, which are the corners of the field, you have to leave over for the ani of Amar, and he says, Harei Zuli Pliny ani, this is for a different ani. What's the story of Lazaimer Zachala? You can say for the other ani. V'chaim Aimrim Yetenenu ani anim sarish. You can't be zeich for a particular ani. You have to give it to the first ani that you find. Amar Ula Amar Rabbi Shimon Levi Machlekes Meiser Me Asher La Ani. The Machlekes between Rav Elazar that says he's zeich for the other ani, the Chacham that says he's not, is from an Asher, one who's not allowed to take payah, picking it up for an ani. Rav Elazar Savar. Rav Elazar holds that what? Why are you able to pick it up for a particular ani? Because if he wanted, what could he do? He could make all his possessions ownerless. Then he'll essentially be poor. And then the chazile, he could take the payah, this corner of the field for himself. So hashanami chazile. So right now, he can as well take it for himself, theoretically, and therefore that's enough to say, that's Rav Elazar holds you can pick it up for your friend. Rabbanan Zavri, no. Chan migu amrinan, tre migu loy amrinan. And therefore, you have to give it to the first ani you find. But we conclude that says the Gemara, ani la ani. If one ani picks up an item and says, I want to pick it up for a different ani, everyone holds it works. Why? Just like you could be zeicha for yourself, you could be zeicha for your friend. One ani can pick up the payah for himself. That ani's allowed to pick up the payah for a different ani. Stop over here. We'll pick it up tomorrow with the sugya of zach migu zach lenafshei zachinami lechavrei.